Hey guys, what's going on? Sunkist here. Today I'm bringing you a video on Fallout 76 builds. I'm going to go over some of the different aspects of what makes a build, the types of build, and kind of subgenres of build, if you will. Talk about legendary perks, types of gear, food, chems, other buffs, and mutations. I'll touch on mutations briefly as well. But this is your one-stop shop if you're a new player and you want to get a general idea of what builds are like. So it's important to differentiate. I think there are really two overarching build types, and those are bloodied and full health. I'm sure you've seen plenty of players around the wasteland where their health bar is pretty much all red and then there's a tiny sliver of actual health left. More than likely those people are running what's called a bloodied build or a low health build. The other main type of genre of build is going to be full health. From there, I think there's actually 4 aspects you can break a build down into. Those are damage output, survivability, utility, and cooperativeness. So I want to start by discussing the overarching parts of your build, right? Bloodied versus full health. So I'll start with bloodied since that's the build that I am, and I'll kind of explain why I chose that and explain some of the pros and cons of each of them. So some of the main benefits of bloodied would include extra damage output, extra XP gain, carry weight bonuses, melee weapon damage, as well as higher hit chance in VATS, as well as AP points and AP regen. Now, a lot of that is going to come from an armor type called Unyielding Armor. It's the first star you can roll on non-power armor. Essentially, as you can see right here, it grants up to plus 3%, up to 3 points of your special stats. So, strength, perception, endurance, charisma, that sort of stuff. Once you're 20% health or below, this will kick in. And as you can see here, I have pretty high stats for everything. So that comes with some implications, right? Strength directly affects how much damage you're doing with a melee weapon. So the higher your strength, the higher damage you're going to do with melee weapons, and also directly affects your carry weight. So those are 2 bonuses right there. Perception is going to affect your hit chance in VATS. So VATS builds are buffed from this. You're going to have a pretty high hit chance. The only thing that Unyielding does not buff is endurance, because that would make your health really high and it would be pretty overpowered. As far as the XP gain goes, that comes via increasing your intelligence stat, and the AP regen and action point ability comes from agility. So that's kind of the main benefits from bloodied. You have access to use, or you have access if you're full health, but some of the perks that you'll see will be very clearly catered to bloodied builds, like this one here. When you fall below 20% health, you'll automatically use a stim pack. Or perks like serendipity, as I'll show here in just a moment. When you're below 30% health, gain a 45% chance to avoid damage. So there is some stuff that helps you increase your survivability, your tankiness, as a bloodied build. But in general, you're gonna die a lot faster than a full health build, and that is the main downside to being bloodied. It comes with its benefits, but you're never gonna outsurvive somebody that is a full health build. One thing I forgot to mention as well when it pertains to damage output, as a bloodied build, you gain access to the first legendary star. Bloodied, essentially, as you can see there, it straight up just increases your damage as your health decreases. A full health build wouldn't have access to something like this. Their comparable first star would be Juggernauts. That increases up to plus 25% damage as your health increases. So, not as much as you can see as a potential plus 95%, but that is something to take into account as well. And the pretty much one and only benefit of full health is just survivability. I mean, you're gonna die way less, and that can be very convenient, especially when you're doing things like daily ops or public events. You're not going to be asking for as many reses from your friends. You're not going to be using probably as many stim packs. You don't have to use as high quality of armor and worry about going down. But as far as full health builds, that's the main benefit, and that's what most people start as. Stuff can get a little tricky when you jump into bloodied builds. Full health builds are a lot more simple. That's also a benefit. But yeah, survivability is going to be your main, I guess, pro over bloodied. So the first category when considering a build is going to be how much damage you want to do, and what links and what resources do you want to go to do extra damage. So there's a number of damage buffing cards within the normal perk card trees. For example, for let's see here, for your automatic rifles, you're going to use the commando cards. And there's going to be three different types of commando. There's commando, expert commando, and master commando. That's going to follow a trend pretty much of every damage type, or every weapon damage buffing card. There's going to be a regular, an expert, and a master. So you can add to up to plus 60% of each of those if you stack them all together, meaning you run all three ranks of commando, master commando, expert commando, things like that. Um, that's for automatic rifles. Riflemen got their own as well. Here, and these are for any single shot or lever action, bolt action rifles. Heavy weapons and shotguns are going to be in the strength tree here. You got expert heavy gunner, shotgunner perks here, and then there's also various different types of melee weapons as well. As you can see here, two-handed melee. Then there's also there's one-handed ones in here as well. I don't know if I have any. Oh, gladiator. There we go. One-handed melee weapons. So strength is going to be heavy, melee, and shotguns. Deception's going to have commando and rifleman damage buffing perks, and agility is going to have automatic and non-automatic pistol buffing perks. And then intelligence was also going to have science cards, which benefit from laser rifles, plasma rifles, things of that nature. Keep in mind that's for rifles or pistols. That is not for any sort of a laser-based heavy weapon. In addition to those, there's other perks that kind of indirectly buff damage. Like for example, tenderizer. Make your target receive 10% more damage for 10 seconds after attack it. I also have better criticals on to do extra critical damage, and savvy, which helps damage output since you're filling your crit meter more, not directly, but as you can see, those are some ways that damage gets buffed. Like I mentioned earlier, I could use this and get extra damage from that bloodied star since it's a bloodied build. There's chems you can use. For example, like the Psycho here, plus 15% damage for 3 minutes. There is food buff, stat buff damage as well. Let's see if I have any. Not sure if I have any at the moment here. But there's some food buffs that can buff melee damage. There's bobbleheads. Big gun bobblehead here, increase heavy damage by 20. So there's a number of different ways to buff damage in this game. It just matters how important it is to you. Next aspect to think about your build is the survivability level. There's a number of perks that will increase that via direct damage reduction or increasing your damage resistance, or giving a chance to reduce the damage. So for example, there is a perk that I use as a bloodied build right here. As you can see, evasive. Each point of agility adds an extra 3 resistance to energy and damage. So this would be considered a survivability card, right? There's another perk over here on endurance called Life Giver, gives an extra 45 health. What else we got here? There's other ones as well. There's another perk here called Fireproof, which essentially lets you take less fire and explosive damage. Ironclad, this also just gives a straight up resistance buff. There's also a perk called Dodgy, I believe, under agility. Let's see if I can find it. At Dodgy, here we go. Avoid 10% of incoming damage at a cost of 30 action points. So if you play around in the perk cards and you take a look, you'll see that there's a number of different cards that is going to buff your survivability. Now the next aspect of that, right, is going to be the armor that you're wearing. See the resistances down at the bottom right of the Pip-Boy screen. Some armor is going to have greater resistances. Some legendary effects will grant additional damage resistance. That is one benefit that a full health build would get. You would have access to the Vanguard's first star, which increases damage resistance as your health increases. So, that's one thing to consider as well. Some armor has greater resistance types than others. There's plenty of videos out there that break that stuff down, but that's another aspect to consider for your build. So, what I would consider to be utility perks would be things that don't increase damage, don't increase survivability, don't help your teammates, and I would call it more of a quality of life portion of your build. Like, for example, right here, this fire in the hole perk, all it does is add a arc to your grenade throw so you can see where it's going to land before you throw it. Now that doesn't directly buff damage or help survivability, it's simply quality of life perk. Now you could consider this, technically one. I mean, it's kind of borders on the line between a damage output perk and a utility perk. It's increasing the size of your damage radius on a grenade. Another one that would be considered a utility perk would be like Scrapper. If you're scrapping weapons and armor, you just get more materials from it, so that can become helpful in the long run. Another utility perk would be good with salt to keep the food in your inventory from spoiling. Another utility perk like this right here. Most people with bloodied builds use this. So your utility perks are gonna be based on what's most important to you. Do you want your guns to break slower, by using the gunsmith perk, or do you want your armor to break slower? There's a give and take relationship between kind of all the aspects of the build, so it's going to depend on what quality of life aspects you want in your build. And also, I would consider any sort of carry weight or weight reducing perks to be a utility perk as well. And the last pillar of a build is going to be cooperativeness. Now, this is going to kind of stem directly on what your charisma level is. So you can actually go back to the perk cards here. You can actually share perks in this game amongst the people that are on your team, and you're allowed to share one perk point worth of cards to your team for every 3 points of charisma you have. Now, this does not include the charisma you'd be getting buffs from the legendary cards. It has to be the amount of charisma that you have selected in the perk building station. So as you can see here, I have a charisma of 3. I'm only able to share 1 point's worth of perk cards to my teammates. So I could share something like good with salt if I wanted to. Now, if you really want to be a really cooperative player, you could run your charisma up to 15 and then share up to 5 perk points to be the max. So let's say I wanted to share, rank 5 gunsmith with my teammates. I would need to run, 15 points of charisma. Now, alongside that, there's also other, stuff that is within the charisma tree that has some team utility that would be considered cooperativeness. Like this right here, disease cures have a 50% chance to cure diseases on nearby teammates. I think one of the most helpful ones would be friendly fire. A lot of people run flamers in this game. You can straight up just heal your friends with a flamer if you're running this perk card. So that would be the last pillar of, what aspects to consider for me. Now, as I'm editing this video, I'm kind of realizing I've just been yapping at you guys for about 15 minutes here, so I'll just kind of wrap it up a little bit and kind of mention that there are subgenres of builds, right? You got bloodied and full health as your overarching styles, but some of those other things would include stealth builds, heavy builds, melee, auto melee, quote unquote tank builds, junkie builds. Um, there's plenty of guides on the internet on how to, or on YouTube on how to do all of those different types, but I just wanted to mention them. Junkies builds, essentially, there are different bonuses you can get from being addicted to certain chems, and there's weapon stars that give you bonus damage to weapons if you're addicted to chems. Um, tank build essentially would just be a full health build that has as much damage resistance and damage resisting perks as possible. Auto melee weapons like chainsaw or the auto axe, there's full builds around that. And there's a lot that goes into this. I did not touch on mutations in this video, so I'm going to leave a link in the description to a great video explaining mutations. But yeah, I hope you guys learned something, and let me know what you want to learn or see in the future. Catch you guys later.